Before we delve right back into 13 Petalled Rose again, we'll begin with a special psalm. That's right, Psalm 45, for the full and speedy recovery of Rabbi Steinsaltz, Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz. Again, this class was really intended also to bring back, right, Rabbi Steinsaltz's speech by saying his words ever since he had a stroke and ever since his speech, most of his speech was taken away from him. So hopefully with our class and this Tehillim, this psalm, Hashem should bless him with a full and speedy recovery. Okay, so we'll say it in Hebrew. Okay, thank you all. So we'll dive right back into fifth chapter, the chapter called Torah. We're nearing the end of this chapter, 73. Thank you. So page 97 in the Orange Book. All right, so basically we're speaking about what he calls the dance of life between this world and the next. And now each and every mitzvah, which is really the translation of Torah into deed, we are merging those two, heaven and earth, next world and this world, together, and we're really making this world holy. So learning Torah and then translating it into deed isn't just a spiritual action, but of course it's a very physical one that also transforms the physicality of the world into spirituality. We deviate into all sorts of topics as usual, which is just fine. Just reminds me, last week we also spoke a little bit about the difference between a choice and a preference in the context of us being a chosen nation. That really only choice that can happen is a choice between two identical things. Otherwise, it's really a preference, right? Whether it's a genetic disposition that leads us to preferring one thing over the other, or other types of influences. But most choices that we make are really preferences, they're not choices. And that's why when we say that we are the chosen nation, it doesn't mean that we're preferred. It just means that God chose us among other nations who were just like us. Because that's really what the word choice means. So continuing with this idea in mind, we'll now proceed to this paragraph. The Jewish definition. Right. So in other words, and by the way, this is a term that we were given immediately at the giving of the Torah, Aman Sinai. God called us Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh, which is what this definition is, right? A kingdom of priests, a nation of priests, and Goy Kadosh, and a holy people. Now, there are many correlations, and it's been pointed out by many commentaries, between what the priests were in the temple and what Jews are meant to be in the world. First of all, the first correlation that comes to mind is that priests do not choose to become priests. You're either born a priest or you're not. If your father was a priest, you're a priest. If your father was a Kohen, you're a Kohen. Your grandfather, etc. If your father was not a Kohen, doesn't matter how much money you can put, it'll make a difference. You can't be a Kohen. Same year. You either choose to be a Jew or you don't. I mean, we have converts, but we really believe that converts are not people that choose to be Jewish. Again, speaking of choices, they have it in them. They just reveal their Jewishness when they convert. So really, it's not something that you choose. It's something that was chosen for you. Again, like God choosing the Jewish nation. Like God choosing who the Kohanim would be. Born into it. Nothing you can do about it. So either you accept it or you reject it, but that role is always expected of you. Same year. Being born Jewish is not a choice you make. By the way, most things in life, you philosophize about this, but we won't go there unless you want to. But most things in life are not really things that you choose, things that God gave you. Then you have the choice whether you want to fulfill your purpose or not. But like talents, gifts, think about it. Either you want to use your talent or not. If you don't use it, it's just going to backfire because you'll feel that a part of yourself was never developed. But you don't choose that talent. It's something that's in you and you just express it. Rabbi Steinsaltz himself has told me countless times, and it's confirmed by a statement that Maimonides makes about converts. But Rabbi Steinsaltz has mentioned this to me many times, that he has yet to find a convert to Judaism who doesn't feel like they have some type of genealogy connects them to Jews. Somewhere in their past, according to Rabbi Steinsaltz, all converts who convert, they feel like, my grandfather was Jewish, my great-grandfather, and I heard that my uncle on my mother's side was Jewish, whatever it may be. But, okay, so they're just revealing that spark. But moreover, just on a mystical level, and Maimonides makes that statement, it's interesting because Maimonides is the first one to phrase it this way, but that's the way we speak about converts in halachic books and so on. We don't say, Goy shenit gayer. That's not the statement, which means a non-Jew that converted. We say a convert that converted. Ger shenit gayer. Never will you find any halachic authority speaking about converts as non-Jews. who converted. Rather, converts who converted. But it doesn't make sense. 1 second. You were a non-Jew and then you converted. What does it mean a convert that converted? And that is, again, because Maimonides explains, that we're always inherently inside Jewish. So yes, they have to go through a whole process to reveal that, to reattach themselves to the Jewish family. But Goy, you can't really say Goy. By the way, there are many halachic implications to that. That's why Kohanim, for example, can represent God in so many ways. One of the mitzvahs that come to mind is Pidyon HaBen, the redemption of the firstborn. The firstborn is to be redeemed. Why? Because everything that's first really essentially belongs to God. If you have a first lamb, you have to sacrifice it to God. If you have a firstborn, then you have to give it to God. Who's there to represent God when you redeem your son from God so that you can keep it and not give it up to God? The Kohen. So the Kohen is really a representative of God in that world, and so are we, representatives of God. So in the essence, it's the same. It's true in the expression of the law, marriage, and so on. It's a little bit different, but in essence, the soul of it is the same. By the way, just an interesting fact here. Are you familiar with the last name Azulai? Oh, that's right, Dani Azulai. Azulai is usually a Moroccan name, but usually the Azulais are Kohanim. How do we know that? Speaking of who they're allowed to marry and who they are not, because really Azulai is an acronym for each word of the verse that says about Kohanim, Isha Zona v'chalala lo yikachu. That a Kohen is not allowed to marry a prostitute and a divorcee, or kind of, chalala, it's a whole halachic term, they should not take. But again, so if you're Azulai, you're a Kohen, and you were given their last name to remind you of who you're allowed to marry, who you're not. If you're a Kohen, so you usually have reminders to that. A lot of Kohanim also will point out that, with the dilution of family names, but some people are Kohens and they're not Kohens. We have, if you know, Betsy and David Cohen in our family. They Kohens, their last name is Cohen, but they're not Kohens. So you have that also. But yeah, if you're Azula, you're reminded of your task as a Kohen every day. But in a way, just by carrying the name Jew, we have that reminder too. And remind us again what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying here, that we are elected. It wasn't our choice. It was God's election of us as a nation of priests and a holy nation. Now, because we have that title, so it's our task in a way to turn this world into a holy temple, as it was the task of the priest to turn the temple into a holy temple. So we are planted in this world, and our task, just like that kingdom of priests, just like priests, is to turn this world into a holy temple. And therefore, why is this connected? Because with each translation of a Torah idea into a mitzvah again, then we are making this whole world into a holy temple, into one big temple. And by the way, this is also one of the ways that a bizarre passage in the Talmud is interpreted. The Talmud says that when Mashiach will come, Atida Israel itpashet al pnei kol ha'aratzot. That's what the Talmud says. That Israel will spread itself to the entire world. So in other words, here we'll be sitting in Scottsdale, Arizona. So we'll be sitting here in Scottsdale, Arizona, but really we'll be in Israel. Why? Because Israel, when Mashiach will come, will spread throughout the whole world. Now how do you explain that? This is one way of explaining it. What is Mashiach? What is that time when Mashiach will come? That's the time in which God will fill the earth. How will God fill the earth? Because we, through our mitzvahs, draw down God. That's why, and the mitzvah, like Maimonides also states, can tip the scale and bring about Mashiach, because that could be the last mitzvah that the world is waiting for, to turn this entire world into a temple. Once this entire world is a temple, then the holiness of Israel really will spread to the entire world. If Israel is the temple of God, is the holy land, so then the whole world will be a holy land, a holy temple. That's how Mashiach comes. It's representative of all the mitzvahs we do to make this world a holy world, a holy temple. It's a big job, but like the Talmud also says, we're standing on giants' shoulders, or like dwarfs standing on giants' shoulders. A lot of the work was thankfully done by our ancestors, and we just have to climb. We'll be the ones touching the heavens and bring the heavens down. Okay, let's continue. Bottom of page 73. Does anyone else want to continue? Right, before you conclude this chapter, I just want to point out two things. Number one, what he's emphasizing, and that is that this doesn't mean that we're any holier or any better than other people. but it's simply that we have more responsibilities. It's almost like in an army, right? You can't say that pilots are more important than chefs. Army doesn't produce food, pilots can't function. So chefs can be essentially maybe even more important than pilots. Everyone has his own task. Our task is to bring holiness down to this world and to make this world holy. That's number one. Number two, this, by the way, is a double-edged sword. Yes, we have more responsibilities, but therefore also God holds us much more accountable. The prophet Amos, I think it says, there's a verse, a very, very painful verse, if you wish, that says that I have loved you from all nations, and therefore I will punish you for your sins. What does that mean? What is Amos saying here? I think it's Amos. And what really he's saying is that, yes, you have more responsibilities, but therefore you have more accountability, right? Yes, God might give us these responsibilities or maybe these blessings, but on the other hand, He also wants us to be those vessels to those blessings. And if our vessels are broken, then God punish us, or pakadati alechem, or hold us accountable. Maybe that's a better translation, because He wants those vessels to be full, to be complete, so that they can hold those blessings. So responsibility also comes accountability, and that's really what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying here. In addition to that, I also want to point out one more thing before we conclude this whole chapter. But I do want to point out that this also doesn't mean that I'm reminded of the story of the Talmud. I don't know if I've shared it with you, but Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya was one of the great Mishnaic sages. He was actually close to the Roman governor and to the Roman governor's family in his times in Israel. Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya was tremendously ugly, and he was very ugly. And one day the daughter of the governor saw him and said to him, "Gosh, I can't believe God makes such ugly people like you." And Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya responded, "Can I ask you a question? Does your father have fine wine?" He says, "Yes." So she says, "Yes, my father has the best wine in the country." So he says to her, "In what vessels does God use for this fine wine?" And she says to him, "He uses wooden vessels to preserve the wine." So he says to her, "Well, that doesn't befit a king, a governor. He should be using golden vessels. How dare he uses wooden vessels like the simpleton? You go tell him to use golden vessels." And she says, "You know what? You're right. We should be using golden vessels. We're a governor. We're kings." So she goes and instructs all of the servants of the king to replace the wooden vessels of wine to golden vessels of wine. After a while, the king is dining. He orders for some wine to come to him, and he tastes the wine, and it's completely sour. And he says, "What happened?" And they tell him, "Maybe it's connected to what your daughter wanted, to replace the wooden vessel, golden vessels." And he calls her and says, "Why did you do that? It ruined my wine. The finest one I had, now it has to go to the garbage." She says, "It wasn't me. It was Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya." So he calls Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya. He says, "What did you tell my daughter to do? I thought we were close friends." And he says, "It wasn't me. It was your daughter. Your daughter asked me, how can God create such ugly people like me?" So my answer, the answer that I wanted to give, was that sometimes the best lights, the best wine, can be held through the ugliest vessels, particularly because they're ugly. Because then it's not about them, it's about what they hold. And I guess she learned it the hard way, that the vessels that held the finest wine had to be ugly. Now she will understand that. So why am I reminding myself of this story? That's because, yes, we have this responsibility, but it doesn't mean that our vessel now is gold. Quite the opposite. We have to see ourselves sometimes as ugly vessels. And then God's holiness can flow through us. But if we start believing that we're gold, just because we have these responsibilities, then our own wine might become sour. So it's another point to remember. So Rabbi Steinsaltz has a very powerful answer to this, a very sarcastic maybe, but very powerful answer to this. So Rabbi Steinsaltz has a different book called We Jews, Who We Are and What We Should Do. Maybe it's a book to study after we finish this in 20 years from now. But who we are and what we should do. And he asks this question, why we hate it so much. And his answer is a two-part answer. He says, number one, it's because people believe that we're the chosen nation. People say about us that we're the chosen nation. And number two, we Jews believe that. So believe that in a way that, we prefer. And so we hate it so much. But that's his, and maybe that's why. Here, Rabbi Steinsaltz is trying to,
tamp it down.
Exactly, debunk this myth. That chosen doesn't mean preferred. Chosen doesn't mean golden vessels. Chosen doesn't mean that we're better. Chosen means that we have more responsibility. Look, Jewish hatred will exist regardless, unfortunately, whether we see ourselves as the chosen nation or not, as the preferred nation, or not. It's an element in society. The Talmud says that Mount Sinai is called Mount Sinai, but the word Sinai comes from the word Sin'ah, which means hatred. As soon as God gave us the Torah, Jewish hatred came down to the world. Sin'ah came down to the world through Sinai, through Sinai. Talmud is a powerful statement like that. But in a way, Abraham Joshua Heschel speaks a little bit about this, and he says that just like people hate the best in the class, a student that gets the A+, student that takes his studies seriously, so too Jewish people are hated because of that Torah makes us take life seriously. So that's that. That's one. Two, in a way, anti-Semitism, the flip side of it, could be good. And, dates back to the author of the Tanya, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, and it's an interesting argument. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, who was the first Chabad Rebbe, had a big argument with some other leaders of his times, including Rabbi Aaron of Karlin, that Hasidic group, and other Hasidic groups, whether Napoleon is good for the world or not. Why were they debating about it? Because Napoleon was approaching Russia. And as he was approaching Russia, they were asking themselves, is it good? Should we support Napoleon or should we not support Napoleon? And Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi was of the opinion that emancipation might free the Jewish people physically, but it will imprison them spiritually. While Russia imprisons the people physically, but frees them spiritually, at least Russia of his time. So maybe Napoleon isn't good for the Jewish people, but because what is most important is spiritual freedom, not physical freedom. That was his opinion. Other Hasidic rabbis said no, that Napoleon is good for the Jewish people. Finally, the pogroms, the other things will stop. So maybe that's better. And it's now, why am I saying that? Because in a way, anti-Semitism forces us to be more Jewish, and that was his opinion. Right? Rabbi Shneur Zalman's opinion. I mean, on the completely other side, more secular side, there's a French philosopher or existentialist, his name is Jean-Paul Sartre, and he has a book called The Jewish Question, La Question Juive. And his whole opinion is that thanks to anti-Semitism, Judaism or Jewish people still exist. If not for anti-Semitism, like that hypothesis that you're presenting, Judaism would have died a long time ago, because it's what reminds us of ourselves. That's what many say about Israel, the conflict in Israel and the Arabs. But so that's the flip side of anti-Semitism. It could be good. It reinforces us who we are. Do we want it? Absolutely not. Legit in any shape or form? Absolutely not. It should be fought, combated, and eradicated, but in legal ways, of course. But we had to draw a blessing from it. That would be the blessing. Look, Racheli Frankel, who was here twice, she's the mother of Naftali Frankel, whose name is on display here, mother of one of the three boys. By the way, we're honored tonight in Israel. The ceremony of Independence Day was just launched a few hours ago, and it's a big deal in Israel. Millions watch it. It's the birthday of Israel. We're celebrating the 71st birthday of the state of Israel, of the modern state of Israel. Racheli Frankel was honored along with the two other mothers, the mother of Gilad Shar and the Eyal Ifrach, to light one of the 12 lamps. Each year, as part of the ceremony, it's an integral part of the ceremony that opens up this Yom Ha'atzmaut, this day of celebration of independence. There are 12 torches that are lit, representing the 12 tribes of Israel. And Israel is the home for all these 12 tribes of Israel. So each time they pick other dignitaries to light a torch. One of the people, one of the groups that lit one of these 12 torches were the three mothers. And in her little speech, I saw the rehearsal 2 days ago. So in her little speech, she spoke about how during those times, when everyone was searching for her boys, and eventually found them murdered in a field in Hebron after 3 weeks of search, she realized that a yachad shelanu, our unity, is so much stronger than our division. And unfortunately, there's moments of anti-Semitism and Jew hatred that make us realize that revelation, right? That the unity is stronger than the division. But we really should strive to live a life in which we don't have to wait for those harsh moments to realize that our unity is stronger than our division. We should live that every day. And by the way, I think that, yes, that's the big plus. Not to philosophize on this too much. I want to conclude the chapter, but like a family, during hard times, we come together. During nice times, it's not always functional. That family unit is not always functional. But negative side of this is, yes, we come together, but then coming together, we're also raising the uniqueness in each and every one. So we come together as one. So even during those tough times of a nation, that unity is shown, but then it's only shown as one. We don't see the diversity in each and every one. And I think that the ultimate type of unity is not just when we come together as one, but we also are able not just to respect, but also to celebrate the difference in each and everybody. And that can only happen during peaceful times. We might say that there's a blessing to anti-Semitism, but I believe that blessing without the ultimate blessing comes without anti-Semitism, because that's when we're able to not just unite, but also to recognize the difference in each and all. Okay, let's conclude this chapter together. And when the people. Does anyone want to finish this? Now, why is that? Kabbalah gives a beautiful, Hasidic teachings give a beautiful example, and that is that if you have, has anyone been a teacher in this room? Yeah, you've been a teacher, so you know that sometimes the teacher's late to class, and then the students go wild, and sometimes they fight, and so on, but then the teacher comes in, and what happens then? Everyone stands still. And the order is right back in class. Now why? Because the teacher's in the room. And same here, what Kabbalah explains is that this world is a jungle. It's chaotic. But by doing a mitzvah, we bring in the teacher in. And then Mashiach is really that moment in which the teacher will be fully in. Right now, maybe he's speaking through the door. But we want him to come in completely. And when he comes in completely, all the order of the room, of the classroom, is reordered or reorganized. Again, because there's the presence of God in the room that automatically creates this order. How do we bring the teacher in? Again, by doing a mitzvah. And then, this is what he says here, the choreographic design of the Torah can be realized in living actuality. And the design comes back to its original choreography, its perfect choreography. And then we can live together in harmony. Again, how does that happen with the mitzvahs that we do? I'll tell you this, well, we have to give him credit. It was inspired by a painter, alav shalom, by the name of Michel Schwartz, who drew something like that, a painting like that, where there's a Torah and its letters are flowing out of it, and then Jews are carrying them. So it was inspired by that, but we decided to put it on because really that represents what we try to do here at CBT, and in general, what I think Judaism is about. Everyone has their own letter. In fact, if one letter is missing in the Torah or is damaged, the whole Torah is puzzled. It's not good. And then why? Because if one Jew is missing, if one Jew is a little bit damaged, then it's the responsibility of affects the whole of the Jewish people. Like he was saying before that, where Knesset Israel, the assembly of Israel, that assembly is stained. So everyone has his own letter. Everyone has his own contribution. Now what's interesting is that the letter that I have is not the same letter that you have. We're not carrying the same letters. And Judaism comes to celebrate diversity. And not only do we want to celebrate diversity, but we want to encourage everyone also to be as diverse as they and only they could be. And by doing that, our Torah is full. So that was the idea behind it. Yeah. Just like going back to the kingdom of priests. So each priest has at his own, unlike the Levites, for example, that sometimes had choirs of singers together and they each had to sing the same song. Priests were different. Every priest had his own different role. Some priests there was a priest responsible for holding the animal, for killing the animal, for burning the animal, for sacrifices. You had priests that were responsible for cleaning this corner of the temple, that corner. Every priest had his own responsibility. And in a way, it ties back to that. Every Jew has his own responsibility. Yes, together, we're working on the temple of God. That's the generic responsibility of everyone. But specifically, individually, we each have our own responsibility, like those priests. I will add just one more thing that comes to mind, and that it's just interesting to note. But going back to the Torah, you know that Kabbalah books teach that the word Israel, is an acronym for Yesh Shishim Ribo Otiyot LaTorah. That there are 600,000 letters to the Torah. Yesh Shishim Ribo Otiyot LaTorah. There are 600,000 letters to the Torah. And why do they teach that? That's because Kabbalistically, and we spoke about this, I think in the chapter Soul, that we are, all of us souls, if you take all of the souls of the Jewish people of all times, we're all rooted really in 600,000 souls. God created 600,000 Jewish souls. From them, those souls were broken and there were millions and millions of souls. But the root souls are 600,000. Now, it is explained that just as the Jewish people are 600,000, the Torah is 600,000 letters. And every letter is unique because every soul has its own purpose again. And that's inspiration here behind this art. But everyone has to bring his own letter. And through that, we create really a Torah. Through that, we unify the 600,000 souls into one body. We spoke, remember, of the POP theory, P-O-P-P. In a way, that's the map of our purpose. The first P stands for personality. We have to know what our skills, what our talents are, what our personality is. If you're given a talent, that means God wants you to use it. So the first thing to ask is, what is our talent? What are our talents? Now, the O stands for opportunities. Opportunities that we presented each and every day, not just the massive opportunities, but the small opportunities of helping someone, maybe the phone call that we get. Those are opportunities that also need to be actualized because they're part of our purpose. The third letter is P, which is people. The people that we meet are part of our purpose too. Some people come in and out of our lives. Some people come in and stay. But they are there for us to learn from them to learn from whatever it may be. And then the fourth is places. The places we go to, also part of our purpose. Sometimes we think we're going to Argentina for vacation, wherever it may be, but there's another purpose to that trip. But really, and then it hits you, that's why I went there. Speaking of Racheli Frankel, I remember speaking to her just about 2 months ago, but she was at the APAC convention, and I was supposed to go, but I didn't go in the last minute. So I asked her, how was it? I missed you this year and so on, and she said that she thought that she went for ABC, but she went for, then it hit her, now I know why I'm here. What was it? When she met our senator, Arizona Senator Kirsten Sinema. Kirsten Sinema was giving a speech about how terror is funded by Iran and how we have to try everything in our power to stop this funding from Iran to the terror. So she went to Kirsten Sinema at the end of the speech to tell her that it has been proven that she has a direct link between Iranian money and the murder of her own son. And her own son was murdered by a terrorist rally that was sponsored by Iran. And she came to tell her that. And she gave her a big hug. And Kirsten Sinema told her, now you gave me even more motivation to fight for this bill. Wow. And she said to herself, you see, I thought I came for A, B, and C, but I came for that moment. One thing is encouraging, and that is that I really believe that God wired us, created us in a way that when we do good, we feel it. Yes. When we don't do good, we also feel it. So there's a trigger at least that can guide us more or less in the right way, even when things are lost in translation. And by the way, this book, 13 Petalled Rose, was actually written in English. Yeah. Only much later on was it translated into Hebrew. So this is Rabbi Steinsaltz's direct words. Right, so I think it goes back to this dance. So the Torah is heaven. But now this heaven has to dance with the earth. The role of the kingdom of priests is to draw down their own letter from that heaven to this earth and dance with it, with the earth, so that it merges into one, if that's clear enough. So it's really being able to create this bridge, or like we said in the past, to create this kiss between heaven and earth. And that's where the Jewish people are the glue. But that's why I said we can't see ourselves, that's even more of a reason not to see ourselves as special people, because that ego might just create the opposite, a division, right, or a separation between heaven and earth. It can't be any slice in the middle. It's not a burger. You have to have the two buns completely together. So we really have to be those vessels. Then we'll conclude with this. I conclude with a special passage from the Talmud that says, "Atita Kadosh Baruch Hu lasot machol tzadikim," that God in the Messianic times will create a big dance for the righteous, and He will sit in the middle, in the center of this dance. So imagine dance like this, and He's right in the center, and everyone will be able to point to God at the center of this dance, and say, Ze Hashem kivinu lo. This is the God that we hoped for. And in a way, that's the ultimate. Just think of that beautiful image the Talmud is presenting, that everyone is dancing, and it's not about me. It's not about my dance. It's not about who I'm dancing with. It's rather about God. God is at the center. And we're all able to take our fingers, that everyone uses their finger and says, this is the God that we worked for. It wasn't about me. It was about this. And this is the God that is making us dance. All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.